Gameplay today. I am your host, Wesley LeBlanc, and today I am joined by Brian Shea. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing really good, and that's because I've been playing some Splatoon 3, a game
Y-
I'm really enjoying, despite not really clicking with the second one too much.
Really, what was it about the second one that didn't do it for you?
Just kind of like after a week or so, I just like lost all desire to play. Like not in a bad way. It was fun to play and I enjoyed it, but I don't know. I just kind of was done with it, I guess. The multiplayer didn't really keep me around, but something about Splatoon 3 is different this time. Maybe it was, I don't know what games came out around Splatoon 2, but maybe it was something to do with that, and I just kind of got off track.
Well, I think that Splatoon 3, it's a good jumping on point for you. If like you've kind of fell off the series. Did you play the first one?
Yes, yeah, I loved the first one.
Okay. Yeah, the second one did have like somewhat of a different vibe, but this one, I think it kind of brings the best of both worlds from both Splatoon 1 and Splatoon 2. And
Yeah.
it still has those same three main pillars. It has the Turf Wars, it has
Hmm.
Salmon Run, which is kind of like a horde mode, and it has what we are looking at right now, which is the hero mode. It's a single player story mode, which if you've listened to my podcast here on the Game Informer podcast network, All Things Nintendo, just a cheap plug right there, I have continually talked about how underappreciated and underrated I think the single player stories are in the Splatoon series.
Yeah.
And I think this kind of continued that tradition. It doesn't feel as novel. I think that's a kind of a recurring theme
Hmm.
for Splatoon 3 is it doesn't feel as novel as the first two games did. And that's because we're at the third entry. It's almost impossible for a game like this to feel as for lack of a better word, fresh as the first two would, because it's just building on what we got with those first two games. That
Yeah.
said, they did bring a lot of really fun improvements. Some really good changes. Most notably, they actually have a lot of content at launch, which I think is the biggest sticking point for me, or has been the biggest sticking point for me as I've reviewed the first two Splatoon games. It's like, yeah, this game is super fun, but like, the first one I think only had 5 maps. The second one had
Hmm.
8 maps in Turf War. This one has 12 maps at start, and they're still committing to those 12
Seasonal
or
drops.
those 2 years worth of free updates. Plus, they've said that the Octo expansion for Splatoon 2 was so successful that they're going to be doing paid expansions for this as well. So like Splatoon 3 right out of the gate already has a leg up over its predecessors. It's the only downside is, it's not feeling as new and unique as it once did, which, is not Splatoon 3's fault. It's just the fact that we've seen this twice before now.
Yeah, I remember the first one, like, and we found out there was a story mode, and I was like, how do you make story mode or campaign out of what Splatoon is? Like, it's very, when Splatoon first came out, it was a big kind of leap of faith for Nintendo, like a third person, very strange shooter. And then they created some excellent story content, in my opinion, over the years with, one and two and whatnot. And this one, the story's there, and I'm enjoying it a lot. And kind of like you mentioned, yeah, it's the levels in single player have always kind of been like a bag of tricks. Like this one level has a theme, and here's what you're going to be doing in it. And it's kind of just more of that. You kind of have like a mechanic that the level's really wanting you to focus on, and then you might do a basic use of it, and then in classic Nintendo fashion, they're going to throw something kind of wild at you using that mechanic. And it's been a lot of fun for me so far. And
Yeah.
also, surprisingly for me, I wonder if I'm interested to hear if the same for you, but quite challenging in some instances. I've had some levels where I'm really stuck on them for a good bit.
Yeah, especially later on in the story mode. We can't talk too specific about like some of the later stuff,
Yeah.
especially with like any kind of like boss battle or anything like that. But yeah, it does get pretty challenging later on. Some of the missions. Thankfully, you don't have to complete all of them. I
Yeah.
completed as many of them as I could, but at the same time, it was like I had a blast with the vast majority of these levels, and that's like not really a Splatoon thing as much as that's a Nintendo thing. Like look at like
Yeah.
Yoshi's Woolly World and Yoshi's Crafted World, and even like the new Super Mario Brothers series. Like those games always introduce new mechanics throughout the entire campaign, only to kind of like abandon them until maybe a later level. Like it's like, all right, this level is this gimmick, and then you don't really use that again until maybe like a later stage. It's like, all right, here's that thing you remember from earlier on, and now it's much harder. And Splatoon does that a little bit.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
we've seen a couple of times in this gameplay where we're not really talking too much about the gameplay specifically, but Small Fry is the big addition to the story mode of Splatoon 3. That you see that little guy. It looks like he's kind of like just kind of staring off into the void there.
Yeah, he's not much going on behind those eyes.
So the entire world is kind of getting infested with this fuzzy ooze that you see before us right here.
Yeah.
And you have to go around, and as you complete these levels, you get these power eggs, and you can give those to Small Fry, this little fish guy, and he can eat these like kind of plots of fuzzy ooze, which opens up new areas. And every time you do that, you have a pretty high probability of finding some collectibles, like the one it's like some stuff that you can use to like customize your locker, which is your multiplayer thing, and other ones you can use to
food tickets. I know
like food tickets, additional power eggs. That's one of the locker customizations, and you can also get sometimes cards for Table Turf Battle, which is the new card battling thing. Which unfortunately I haven't had a chance to try because it wasn't a part of like the multiplayer session that Nintendo set up, but I think we're about to hop into another level here.
Yeah, and so kind of like you mentioned, the fuzzy ooze you'll have to take down to progress through the game. So you'll need to be completing levels. But if you want to like 100% everything and get all the collectibles and stuff, you'll need to make sure you get rid of all the fuzzy ooze. And I've been doing that. I feel like I'm at least past the halfway point in the story mode, and it's taken. I've had to replay a few levels just to get enough eggs to like actually get rid of all the ooze in the level. But you kind of mentioned that you're just kind of doing what you need to do to move on.
Oh no, I've done the vast majority of them.
Okay, gotcha, nice. Yeah, so I've personally found great enjoyment in trying to like get enough ooze or power eggs to get rid of all the ooze, because I do enjoy a lot of the collectibles. And the great thing about Splatoon, with a lot of multiplayer shooters like this and single player campaigns, is that a lot of the stuff you're getting here in the single player, transfers over to what you're doing in the game elsewhere. Which is
and
nice.
That's something that Splatoon 3 does really well, is like if you're playing multiplayer or you're playing Salmon Run or you're playing the single player here, it does really all kind of feed back into like, all right, you unlocked the thing for your locker, or you unlocked some new gear or whatever. And this level right here, which is mostly meant to just kind of push you forward, and you're kind of going backwards, but
yeah, right as you mentioned it.
It really showcases what is so much fun about Splatoon, which is the swimming just feels so smooth, so fluid, so just good.
Yeah.
And that hasn't changed since the very first time. And later on, like kind of talking about what we were discussing before, it gets expanded upon in one where it's like, all right, now you have a time limit that you have to swim through, and like there's like enemies, but you're not supposed to stop and shoot them because you have to finish the level in a certain time. But yeah, like it just feels so good to move around in this world, and you're kind of slow when you're on foot, but when you sink beneath the surface and swim, like it feels among the best of any video game's movement.
Yeah, I agree. And it's especially a fun movement style in a third-person shooter, and one that's multiplayer too, Nintendo is very good at making games unique to them, and Splatoon's one of them. And with any multiplayer game, with so many being out there, it's important to like differentiate yourself from others, and I think Splatoon's excellent and very smooth. Swimming mechanics do just that. As you can see, I keep falling down, failing to platform, and that's because I am after every single one of the power eggs. I didn't necessarily realize that you don't need to get all of them. There's benefits to getting all of them, but like it's not necessary at all to complete the level. And so I found myself doing that at the start, and then where I'm at now, I'm not necessarily trying to get every single egg, because by the end of a level you get thousands. That said, you can see me doubling back to get a few more power eggs because I am a completionist at heart. What can I say?
Well, hey, I mean, unfortunately for you, there are no trophies on Nintendo.
It's fortunate for me, actually, because I love me a good PlayStation trophies list, and I would be spending a lot more time in Splatoon 3 trying to track down trophies if they had them. And yeah, so this is the second level in the story mode, and that's where we're going to end our single player discussions here. Again, be on the lookout for Brian's full review, where I'm sure he'll dive more into it. And so now we're going to head over to the highlight, or the main portion, I guess you could say, of Splatoon 3, which is the turf war. And so yeah, how have you been enjoying that?
I had a really great time with it. It was kind of like a full day of just playing turf war, and then I also got to play the Splatfest that Nintendo put on, in addition to the full day of just kind of, pardon the pun here, but submerging myself in the multiplayer offerings. And it feels like the perfect culmination of the Splatoon formula, where it's like, all right, you have 12 maps to kind of go on a rotational basis, which I'm still not a huge fan of. Like, all right, you can only play like these 2 maps for like the next however long it is. Like, I forget if it's an hour or 2 hours that they rotate, but the maps are well made. Some of them are returning favorites, some of them are new ones. But yeah, it's a really great time, and it's like a frantic pace, and it's nice that everybody can choose drastically different classes. Like if you can get the ink roller, like you're seeing you use right here, or you can do the splatter shot, or like one of the versions of the splatter shot, the way that I kind of tend to lean. Like I like kind of the classic Splatoon. Nice, a double kill there. Triple kill. Wow. I can see why you chose to use this match instead of some other ones.
Of my losses, yeah.
Yeah. It's funny because like sometimes I'll feel like I'm just like rocking it, and then other times it's like, man, I can't do anything.
Yeah, it really, in a weird way, like the game's team-based, obviously, but like you're not really talking to your teammates, because that's just not what this game is. But it's so crucial that your team members do well as well. Like you don't necessarily need to coordinate, but you do need to be cognizant of like team members so that you're laying down ink. Because I can definitely tell when my team is kind of slacking in that department. And that's a unique thing about Splatoon that I really love, is you kind of are on your own through the map, or through a multiplayer mode match, and you really need to like, make sure you're looking out for your teammate as well, and ensuring that they have places to go. Like when I played this ink roller like this, it's like my number one job is to just keep making paths for my teammates. I'm not necessarily out to get kills. Whereas if I have like a splatter shot or something like that, I'm all in on kills.
Although, I mean, hey, you've done some good splatting here in this match, but I think that the 2 big things you do for teammates, aside from like helping them in like certain matches, is you either like if it's like, oh, you see somebody battling another member of the other team, you can jump in and join them and like kind of even the odds a little bit, or you can let them kind of spawn on top of you, or you can also let them know like, hey, come this way. Like you see like on the bottom left corner, you can say this way, or you can also say booyah, but like I feel like that's less important. But yeah, like this way, and like I know there's some communication you can do through the app, but I mean that's all minimal. That's all peripheral stuff. The main thing is just kind of making sure that you're doing what you're doing, and not dragging the team down, really.
Yeah, for sure. And so this is the second turf war match, which we're going to watch this last one before jumping into Salmon Run. And I believe I'm using the default weapon. I can't remember what it's called, the hero gun maybe, or something like that. But it's just like a standard machine gun thing.
Yeah, it's hero gear, but I think it's just like a version of the splatter shot that you're using.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, we had limited time to do multiplayer, so I wasn't able to, try out every single weapon that I wanted to, but I did try out a good few, and my 2 standouts are these ones, this, standard machine gun, and then the ink roller. The ink roller's been my favorite since, like, I can remember. I just think it feels so good to roll around with that. What's your weapon of choice in multiplayer?
I mean, I think it's got to be still the splatter shot, though. I do like the tri-stringer bow. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Speaking of like new tactics and everything, because the tri-stringer bow and the splatana are like 2 of the big new additions here in terms of like weaponry. Did you try out the new moves, like the squid roll or the squid surge?
Yeah, so is the dodge roll or squid roll, is that thing with the dual pistols?
No, that's actually like when you're swimming, you can change directions abruptly, like jump and change directions, and it almost gives you like a complete 180 turn, and also gives you like a quick shield. So it's a new move they added for this. And then there's also the Squid Surge, where if you go onto a wall, like say you spray ink on the wall, rather than slowly climbing up it, you can hold the jump button and it'll charge you up and just kind of like rocket you up the wall.
Yes,
So those
yeah.
are the two kind of like new traversal moves they've added for this game.
Do you feel like those have changed how you're playing or how you're attacking enemies?
I would say the Squid Roll more so than the Squid Surge. The Squid Surge is like a nice to have, I guess, but it's not
Yeah.
like, all right, well, this is like changing, like flipping my world upside down. It's more of a, all right, there's a long wall that I want to climb, and sometimes I feel like holding it and letting it fly up, but other times I'm just like, yeah, I'll just swim up. It's not that big of a time difference in most cases, but like a really tall wall, yes, I will use it.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's not too. I mean, there's some tall walls in the maps, but maybe once a map I'm going up them or something like that. I think maybe if I like focus more on those new moves and the fact that I have them at my disposal, I'll get better at using them. But I kind of fall back into my old habits of just walking around and spraying.
I will say the Squid Roll really can have the potential to change like a one-on-one matchup. Like if you go up on somebody and they're like trying to spray you, you can not only like kind of jump all around in rapid succession, but also you're shielded every time you emerge from the ink for that jump.
Yeah.
So it can really like give them some fits if they're not super precise with their aiming.
Yeah, especially with like a weapon like the one I'm using, where you do need to kind of be more precise, or the Slatana. And speaking of that one, what do you think of that new weapon? I like the tri-string bow a lot. I'm not too sure how I feel about the katana-like weapon. I think it's just because I'm not good at it.
Yeah, the Splatana almost reminds me of the kind of like the paintbrush weapons that they have, where it's like you have to balance projectile and like kind of the up close melee portion of it. And it took me a while to get it, but I think it has a higher skill ceiling than most weapons in Splatoon. Like maybe like the sniper rifle sits at the top of that list.
Yeah.
But the Splatana is pretty high, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. And speaking of Splatana, you can see me using it here in action in Salmon Run. So it is new to the game, and you can charge it up to do this kind of long range shot that I'm doing, or you can kind of just fast paced swipe back and forth. And yeah, so tell me about Salmon Run. Have you liked it in previous games, or is this a new beginning for you?
No, I loved Salmon Run last game. The problem was it was only available certain hours of the day.
Yeah.
They fixed that with this one, which I am so happy about. And they also added a bunch of new bosses. They added some kind of like they've added the ability to throw the golden egg. They made it so you can play it at any time, and they also have the king salmonids in addition to the bosses, which is great. Like the pacing is, I would say, perfect in this. And honestly, it deserves more love now that you can play it whenever you want. I understand why people like maybe just didn't bother with it last game, because it's like, oh, I'm really in the mood to play Salmon Run, and then you go to play it and it's not available at that time. Now it's available 24/7, as long as servers are up, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with it as well. More fun than I expected, because I wasn't a big fan of it in 2. I think a lot of that was just the timing thing, as you alluded to. It was really such a strange decision to do that, and I'm glad.
I think maybe they were concerned. I mean, this is speculation. Maybe they were concerned that like they wouldn't have the biggest player base, so they had to consolidate them all down into the one kind of like window. So it's like, all right, well, everybody who wants to play Salmon Run is going to make an appointment to play it. But then they probably realized, oh, nobody in the modern era has like appointment viewing for anything. We're all trained at this point to like, we don't even have to have appointment viewing for our favorite TV shows. Like if we don't want to, we could just watch it on streaming. So it's like, I think they learned a lesson with that last time. But you see like the maps evolve over the course of the match. Like the water just receded for this, the egg kind of basket relocated, so you can go and you have to go and explore a new area that's not already coated with ink. And this changes kind of the dynamics of the match.
Yeah, so if somebody has never played Salmon Run and they're kind of watching this like, what the heck is this? How would you describe like what's going on here?
If you ever played Gears of War, it's basically Salmon Run or Splatoon's version of Horde mode. And there are bosses that come through every wave, and by defeating bosses, you get these golden eggs, which you can see in the upper left corner. Each wave has a quota that you need to hit in order to move on to the next wave. And there's 3 waves, and the bosses are the ones that drop these golden eggs. But there's also a whole host of other like kind of minion-style enemies that are coming in as well. So you just have to collect the golden eggs that are dropped by bosses and deposit them in those baskets. You can see your team is doing pretty well right here. You already have 6 of 7, but there's only 40 seconds left. So it's pretty fast-paced, and it can get very frantic, especially once the bosses really start coming out. Each wave is more frantic than the last one. So this is, what is it called? Slammin' Lid, I think it's called, which is a nice little play on Salmonid. And the Slammin' Lid is like a UFO that puts a shield around, and then it sometimes can slam down and cause a bunch of ink to spray out. But also you have to hit it on the top, so you can either wait for it to slam down and attack it, or climb to the top. It's one of the new bosses in this mode. There's also a bunch of other bosses that are part of this, and maybe we'll see a couple of those as we progress through here. But yeah, just each wave as it ends, it checks to see if you hit the quota. Then you all kind of transport back to this main platform, and then the next wave starts. And each wave in the main mode, at least, you get a random loadout kind of. So you started with the Splatana. I forget what you had last round up. And yeah, the map will change as well. So that one, the water was coming back in. But with this one, you got the tri-stringer bow. So this is actually a good showcase of both of the new weapons, like the big new additions here. So you saw that was one of the boss types, just kind of like a heavily shielded guy. Some of them are offensive. Some of them are just kind of meant to like make you take a lot of time and like work together as a team. There's another Slammin' Lid there.
Yeah, each one has like a different way to be defeated too. And it has a tutorial that I ignorantly skipped that tells you how to defeat each boss. So I was kind of learning on the fly how to specifically defeat each boss. So if you're playing when this game comes out, I highly recommend paying attention to tutorials.
Yeah, I mean, you do kind of, it is fairly easy to learn these on the job.
Yeah.
But, yeah, they're not all the most complicated, but like you do well if you're not on like a time crunch to take the time to really get to know how you can take advantage of these guys and beat them. So like this is another boss that like, you can tell some of your teammates read the tutorials or watched the tutorials.
Yeah.
But that's like a fish that kind of jumps up, and then he'll like hover for a second and then splash down and cause a whole wave to come out. Here's one that's like almost like a leaky garden hose, and you have to attack it on the back where like an actual Salmonid is. It's like a machine that's running through it and just leaving like their color ink everywhere.
Yeah, but yeah, this is basically Salmon Run. I specifically chose this footage because, as you'll soon see, my team did pretty amazingly. And Mr. Grizz will kind of let you know diegetically whether you guys have done okay or not. And then, your performance in Salmon Run dictates how much you get as a result, both in experience and rewards, and then currency and whatnot as well.
And also, you chose this because we were on the same team.
Yeah.
The one thing of footage you did that we both were present for.
Yeah, we were randomly grouped up together, which was perfect.
Yeah, it was.
And so that's going to wrap up this new gameplay today. Brian, thank you so much for joining us. Pleasure to have you on. And everyone, be sure to read his full review for all his thoughts on Splatoon 3 on the site very soon. Bye now.